It was a cold Tuesday morning, the kind where you're still half asleep, squinting at the clock and wondering how the hell it's already 6:47 a.m. I'd barely finished my coffee when the doorbell rang, loud enough to shake the dust off the walls. I figured it was probably a delivery or, knowing my luck, my neighbor asking if I could lend him the hedge trimmer again. I wasn't ready for what I was about to face. I opened the door in my pajama pants, rubbing my eyes, and there she was, Brenda Whitmore, the self-appointed queen of Ridgemont Hills, standing there with two oversized suitcases, a pillow tucked under her arm, and this smug expression that could curdle milk. Her blonde hair was pulled back in what I can only describe as a "let me speak to your manager" bun, and she was wearing a lime green tracksuit that screamed, "I peaked in 1987. Honestly, I wasn't sure if she was here to sit or if she was about to ask me to sign a petition to save the planet. "Well, it's about time," she huffed, pushing past me like she owned the place. "I've been standing out here for at least 3 minutes. Do you have any idea how inappropriate it is to keep someone of my standing waiting?" I blinked hard, not sure if I was still dreaming. "Excuse me, Brenda," I said, standing there dumbfounded. "What are you doing in my house?" She dropped her bags right in my foyer with all the confidence of someone who just conquered a small nation. "I'm MOVYing in, OBVY usly," she said. "Didn't you get my notice? I slipped it under your door last week. 6 months, rent-free. Consider it your contribution to community leadership." I just stared at her for a second, trying to process the audacity of this woman. "You want to live here for free for 6 months?" I asked, still processing. She rolled her eyes like I was the one being ridiculous. "One has nothing to do with it," she snapped, eyeing my levying room like she was conducting a military inspection. "It's a necessity. My property situation has become complicated. Temporarily, of course. And since you're single, have this big house, and frankly, could use some proper guidance on how to maintain neighborhood standards. This arrangement benefits us both." It clicked. Brenda, the woman who'd made my life miserable for the past 3 years with her nitpicky HOA violations, late-night emergency meetings about mailbox heights, and passive-aggressive notes about my lawn, had somehow lost her house and decided I was her personal charity case. "Let me get this straight," I said, trying to fight back laughter. "You think I'm going to let you live in my house because you say so?" Her face twisted into that special kind of ugly that only comes from a lifetime of getting your way through sheer force of entitlement. "Travys, I don't think you understand the power dynamics here," she said, her tone cold and patronizing. "I'm the HOA president. I have connections with the city council, the zoning board, and half the real estate agents in this county. Cross me, and you'll find yourself dealing with violations you didn't even know existed." I was shaking my head, processing everything she'd said, when it hit me. I had bought this house in Ridgemont Hills thinking I'd found a nice, quiet neighborhood. What I hadn't counted on was Brenda Whitmore, who treated the HOA presidency like it was a seat on the Supreme Court. In my first week, I got a note about my welcome mat being 2 inches off center. By the second week, she was measuring my grass and issuing a violation because it was allegedly 3/4 of an inch too tall. By the third month, I was getting weekly citations for things like unauthorized parking in my own driveway and inappropriate holiday decorations, one jack-o'-lantern. But this was next-level insanity. "So, let me understand your logic," I said, crossing my arms. "You've been harassing me for 3 years, making my life miserable with petty violations, and now you want me to house you for free because you're HOA-ing property problems?" She waved her hand dismissively like it was nothing. "That's all water under the bridge," she said. "Besides, you should be grateful. HOA-ing someone of my caliber levying here will raise your property value. Think of it as an investment." I could hardly believe the brass of this woman. "Brenda," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I want you to listen very carefully. You are not MOVYing into my house. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Take your bags and find somewhere else to freeload. Her face went through several shades of red, finally settling on something resembling a ripe tomato. You can't be serious, she said. Do you have any idea who I am? What I can do to you? Yeah, I replied, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. You're the woman who's about to leave my property before I call the police for trespassing. That's when she showed me exactly how crazy she really was. Brenda's face contorted into something that belonged in a horror movie, and she let out a shriek that probably registered on seismic equipment 3 counties over. You cannot do this to me, she screamed, grabbing her pillow and hugging it like a security blanket. I am the president. I have rights. I stood there in shock as this 60-something-year-old woman threw what could only be described as the world's most epic adult tantrum. She stomped her feet, waved her arms, and started pacing around my foyer like a caged animal. Brenda, you need to calm down, I said, still trying to process what was happening. And don't you dare tell me to calm down. She spun around and pointed at me with a shaking finger. You people are all the same. No respect for authority, no understanding of hierarchy. I've dedicated my life to this community, and this is how I'm repaid. It hit me, you people. What do you mean, you people? I asked, already dreading the answer. She caught herself for a moment, realizing she'd revealed more than she intended. I mean, she stammered, people who don't appreciate community leadership, people who think they can just ignore the natural order of things. The natural order where you get to live in my house for free? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, she shrieked, clearly missing the sarcasm entirely. That's when I realized Brenda Whitmore wasn't just an HOA tyrant, she was completely unhinged. She ranted about how I needed her to properly maintain the community, how her house loss wasn't her fault, and how the bank just didn't understand her value. The irony of it all hit me like a truck. She'd spent years monitoring everyone else's lawn and property while apparently neglecting her own finances. You lost your house because you were too busy writing violation notices to pay your mortgage? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I didn't lose anything, she yelled, her face turning redder by the second. It's a temporary relocation while I sort out some bureaucratic nonsense with people who don't understand the importance of my work. Right. So you lost your house because of your work? I said, barely able to keep the laughter down. And now you want me to house you during this temporary relocation. She looked around wildly, collecting her things in a frenzy. You owe me, she spat. You should be grateful for everything I've done for this community. You think the property values would be what they are without my vigilance. At that, I could hardly keep a straight face. You've sacrificed everything, Brenda, including my sanity. Her eyes narrowed. You're going to regret this, Travis. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I know everyone in this town. I know which inspectors to call, which codes you're probably violating, which permits you might have forgotten to file. Cross me, and I'll make your life a living hell. I couldn't help but laugh. Brenda, you've been trying to make my life hell for 3 years. What exactly are you going to do that you haven't already done? She grabbed her suitcases, muttered under her breath, and stomped out, promising me this wasn't over. And just like that, I thought it was. Little did I know, that was just the opening act of the wildest 6 months of my life. The next day, I found a citation taped to my door, not slipped under it, not placed in my mailbox, but taped directly to the door with what appeared to be industrial-strength packing tape. Violation notice. It read in Brenda's angry handwriting. Homeowner Travis Thompson has failed to maintain acceptable lawn edging standards as outlined in Section 47B of the Ridgemont Hills Community Guidelines. Fine, due law $150. Failure to comply within 48 hours would result in additional penalties and possible legal action. I walked outside and looked at the so-called offending lawn edge. It looked exactly the same as it had for the past 6 months. Neat, trimmed, completely unremarkable. And that's when I realized Brenda wasn't just petty, she was escalating. I called the HOA management company, and the conversation confirmed everything I suspected. This was no longer just a neighborhood dispute. Brenda had lost her grip on reality and was using her position to turn Ridgemont Hills into her personal playground. This nightmare wasn't over. Not by a long shot.